merely Mardi Gras costumes. Even some of them were, which they probably were. Shaw himself remarked, quote, "Mardi Gras, the day we mask up and reveal our true selves." Just as the Cuckoo's Nest echoes the style of Wilde, here Shaw paraphrases Wilde's bon mot, "Give a man a mask and he'll tell you the truth." Shaw is said to have been particularly fond with the masochistic role. Perry Russo, who testified for the prosecution, said that his, quote, "friends, people I generally associated with," unquote, all participants in the SM scene in New Orleans, are aware that Clay Shaw, quote, "entertained those kind of desires," unquote. Masochism is arguably a manifestation of thanatos and eros in a controlled situation. The masochist desires to be punished, humiliated, maybe even have his or her life threatened, and while this is exciting for the M, the S and M roles both know that they will not cross a certain line. No one will die. But when Jim Garrison arrested and prosecuted Clay Shaw in New Orleans, the stakes were higher. Garrison knew that Shaw was only one small piece of a conspiracy, one involved in managing Oswald in New Orleans. But with Barry, Ruby, Oswald, and Guy Bannister all dead, Garrison was forced to focus most of his energies on Clay Shaw. Garrison did not have access to many of the then classified documents that proved Shaw's extensive involvement with the CIA. With the aid of information not available until after Garrison's death, Mellon, Eugenio, and Davey make a strong case for Shaw's deep CIA connections, building upon Jim Garrison. Like his dramatic alter ego, Clay Shaw was sacrificed, this time by the CIA, who realized that Americans by the late 60s were no longer buying the, quote, lone nut assassin narrative. Shaw was to be a, quote, limited hangout, a sacrificial lamb to attract attention away from the CIA, who knew well that Garrison would not be able to prove Shaw's CIA involvement. In light of this, when Shaw was asked during the trial, "How do you feel?" Shaw time and again smiled and declared, "I feel like a spring lamb." Shaw knew this remark would be reported in the media in James Kirkwood's book. A spring lamb is a young suckling lamb, and while the expression connotes feeling energetic, other layers reveal themselves. One, of course, suggests that Shaw is innocent as a pure white lamb. But spring lamb also suggests sacrificial lamb, a scapegoat. Sacrificial lamb is killed for the good of the social unit, which remains pure via the blood sacrifice. Clay Shaw knows he is being made a sacrifice by the CIA, and what's more, on some level, like his character Shaw, something deep within him likes it. Shaw therefore never behaved in the expected manner of a man accused of conspiring to kill a president. Shaw's, quote, cool, detached affect throughout the trial seemed strange to some observers. Often Shaw was cheery and affable with smiles and handshakes to the press and the audience. I'll just skip a little bit here. Stated plainly, the Garrison-Shaw trial can be understood as a public performance of SM. Like his character Shaw in Subverse, Shaw is on one level attracted to the idea of being sacrificed and surrendering to death. Garrison played the role of sadist. Jim Garrison was well known for hurting gay men. One of the first actions he performed as DA was a crackdown on homosexuals as a, quote, raiding gay bars frequently, arresting gay kids on the streets of the French Quarter. Perry Russo's testimony was crucial for Garrison's case, and Russo's words were likened to sadism by SM participants themselves. Russo's friends questioned him when they learned he was testifying against Shaw and teased him, "Who are you beating up now?" Quote, "They just rap on. I got a lot of that," Russo admitted. As DA, Garrison personally or vicariously interrogated, surveilled, and arrested Shaw. At the trial, he put Shaw through the ringer, exposing Shaw's semi-closeted sexuality via witnesses and humiliating him. Meanwhile, Garrison himself didn't even appear in court for most of the proceedings, perhaps taunting Shaw with the image of the DA relaxing poolside at the New Orleans Athletic Club, a male homosocial milieu frequented by both men, while Shaw was laid out under the spotlight of public scrutiny. Garrison didn't know how guilty Shaw was, even if he was sure that Shaw wasn't innocent. Garrison was sure that Shaw was involved to some extent and therefore wanted to hurt him. Yet Garrison didn't want Shaw to die, which could eventually happen were Shaw found guilty. When Shaw was found not guilty, Garrison was relieved. Quote, "I was really glad myself when the verdict came in. I felt relieved for the defendant," unquote. This seems a rather odd response, right? That if you really knew that someone was conspiring to kill Kennedy, surely you would want him found guilty and punished. Thus, both Shaw and Garrison were perhaps on one level hoping for the guilty verdict, Shaw subconsciously desiring to be that sacrificial spring lamb, a masochist that Shaw would be found guilty. Yet,